G that you mentioned, and you also mentioned that your favorite character is the Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this part of your personality and this part of your experiences.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm hearing about Limitless, and you realize, is that there are strange references. There's a Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, and there's examples of Napoleon, and there's Tom and Jerry,
right, yes.
who we are all very familiar with, and there's Van Gogh. But there's also a lot of Bollywood.
A lot of Bollywood, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
there are a lot of examples from films, and I think two things I'll say is, one is I use and tell stories of things that are close to me. You will see there's no sports example in my book because I don't understand sports. And I think we should express ourselves in what is natural to us. The second thing that I think is important, which is, it's unrelated to your question but related, and it's about the film examples, is that I think narratives have to be, and our stories have to be Indian.
Right.
The Indian woman or the Indian man or the young Indian is building a career in a country that is very different from our Western counterparts, with a social background that is also very different, the parents that are very different. So, Sharma ji ka beta, who I talk about, or beti, is a very Indian,
Right.
it's an Indian reality, and we know that, which is why I think a lot of my references are very Indian, and I wanted Limitless to be an Indian story, because I think our stories have to be told our way with our narrative.
That's beautiful, and just before this, I was actually congratulating Radhika on another first in her life. So she's going to have her first baby in the month of July. So
yes, early July.
Congratulations, Radhika.
Thank you.
It is a fantastic journey, and I'm sure you'll enjoy every step of the way. But this was another theme that we discussed, right? That these stories are never told, and pregnancies, especially in the Indian corporate context, are never really celebrated and never really talked about. In fact, if at all, then people sort of feel worried about the fact, whether the person, the woman who's coming back into the workforce, is she going to be all in? Is she going to be distracted? And this is a sad reality of today's life, and probably one of the major contributors to the sort of declining statistics that we see, right? What do you think about that, and what do you want to say to our viewers?
Which is why I've been reasonably actually public about pregnancy, because one, it's a beautiful phase. Two is, I have to share this, that when I think in October I found out that I was expecting, like many people, like many women in my situation, I was also stuck with this, oh, the world is going to end kind of thing. I won't be able to work, I won't be able to do X, Y, Z, and I had just become sort of vice chair of Amphi. I knew that Limitless was going to release. We're also doing a new home. There are a bunch of personal projects. Later World Economic Forum came up, and so I couldn't have. This was a really busy time in life, and then I started Googling around, and you laugh at me. So I was reading stories of Marissa Mayer and other CEOs. I was like, are there other CEOs who were pregnant when they were, and by the way, those stories helped me. Right. So when I learned that, in your tricky times, the power of storytelling and examples is important. And then 7 months later, as I've gone through this, I realized, dude, everything happens. Everything Absolutely. Just works out. Absolutely. And I talk about honest conversations at the workplace. If you are honest with people around you, with your bosses, with who you work with, if you share and ask for help honestly, and if you take off the burden of being perfect all the time,
Absolutely.
which I also talk about later in the book, you will get through things, and literally everything has happened. It's not happened perfectly, but it has happened. And that's why I felt over the last 2-3 months, as I settled into this, it was also important to share that experience, which is why Absolutely. I started talking about it around Women's Day, and I, continued to talk. And just last week, someone who's very senior in a company came to me and said, she's like, so you had a late stage pregnancy, were you not stressed on how you'd get through it, because this is bothering me? And I'm glad I read something that you posted. And so I'm saying, if a conversation about Marissa Mayer, a story about her helped me, hopefully a few of us talking about this will help others and contribute positively to this workforce movement, because this is the single biggest thing that causes dropout and so many of the issues. And I don't think we need to go prove our commitment to anyone. I've worked very hard through my career, and I don't think I need to prove my commitment to my work. And by the way, I don't think 1, 2, 3 months or whatever months of maternity leave in a 30-year career take away from my commitment.
Absolutely.
I have a colleague who's nurse, who's working with his father, and he's working from home for a couple of months because his father is unwell. This happens in all of our lives. So why do we make a big deal about my lack of commitment or someone else's lack of commitment here?
Absolutely. This is the mindset that we try to change every day. And, and this cannot be a better example than, someone who's expecting a baby in the next couple of months to come and say, hey, listen, in a long 30-year-old career, this is actually nothing. But on a lighter note, Radhika, I must tell you that this gives bragging rights for life. So please do not give up on that, and ensure that you keep bragging about it.
Seriously.
Because there are some things which your husband will not be able to do, and this is one of them.
Exactly.
So not to forget that. Coming to your husband, I found him coming in bits and pieces in the book, and very beautifully so, and he is the marathon runner, but more importantly, he saved your life on the 21st floor story. And, I read an HBR article a few years ago which said that women who wish to have great careers should either have a super supportive spouse or none at all. Do you agree with that?
Oh, look, I think a supportive partner helps for both men and women. In the case of women, maybe a little more. In the case of Indian women, I think a supportive partner and a good ecosystem in terms of in-laws and family is incredible. I've been very fortunate, to have one, because I think an individual goes through a lot in life, and not just pregnancy. You have up days, you have down days, you have so much chaos that goes on in life. Nalin and I are fortunate and unfortunate in that we have been business partners together. We work in the same industry. The good part about that is that you understand each other. So, if you're working late because it's a really rough market run, then you don't ask each other questions about why that happens. But there's a little lack of work-life balance at home because you're always talking shop. I mean, it just is not avoiding. But, I find that it's very interesting that you've asked this question, because a lot of young women write to me, and sometimes they do these Zoom sessions with me. And believe it or not, and they don't know me, right, personally. But one of the most common questions they ask for is, what should I look in a husband?
Yeah.
So it is on the top of people's minds. That I'm thinking about getting married. What should I look for and what should I not look for? And I think look for a partner who's a genuine partner. Look for a partner where the values align.
Absolutely.
I think, financial values, values towards life, values towards who you want to be, and where the goals and ambitions align. And I think have those conversations up front with the partner and with the family. Because romance is one part of it, but there's a life that you have to build together.
Absolutely. No, that's a beautiful, thought that we are leaving you with, and it's true. I mean, I know we're going to complete 25 years of our marriage. And,
wow! Congratulations.
And I think, without that understanding and the respect for each other, which happened many, many years ago in school for us, I would never have reached this stage to say that, both our careers are equally important. And managing dual careers is difficult, and but both people need to have that respect for each other, and that's what you should look for. Really.
I remember when this World Economic Forum announcement happened, I think about a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with my mother and my husband, and that the program will involve a lot of travel, and it will happen after the baby. And both of them were like, listen, go out and pursue your dreams completely. And he's like, I'll travel with you. I'll be there with the baby. My mom and mother-in-law were like, we'll be there. Go out and do everything, right? And I think that's what you need to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the smart thing to do in this case, and this is a practical tip, is that perhaps you should just figure that out a little before you take that momentous decision
I agree.
of getting
I
married
agree.
to somebody.
I agree. I mean, have these, these are like, I've talked about tough office conversations in the book, but these are tough life conversations
True.
that probably should be had early.
Should be had early on,
Yeah.
absolutely. And before taking the step, absolutely. So thank you for that. That's a wonderful nugget of wisdom there. Um, one question, and then we'll move on to the rapid fire round. So the one question that I want to ask you is, you have a lot of fans that aspire for her, and we get a lot of folks who want to come and join our community. So here to all the viewers who are actually watching Radhika, a personal invitation from both of us to come and join,
Yes.
aspire for her. What do you think your message is to the people that aspire for her?
Look, I think communities are important, and I have to confess something. At the beginning of my career, I wasn't a big believer. And I wasn't a big believer because when I entered the workforce at a junior level, the world was quite close to 50-50. And then I've gotten older and I've realized the world is not so close to 50-50. And shared experiences and shared stories help. And over the last 2-3 years, I've actually made a proactive effort to join communities. Not all of them are women's communities, but they are different communities, and they are communities like this. And the reason is also this, that, I think all of us need to grow personally. I'm someone who believes in personal growth and the power. And beyond the point, sitting in the same industry, doing the same thing, you do feel a sense of stagnation. So I joined a CEO forum a few years ago, which has been one of the best things I've done. And I remember during COVID, and I always feel the financial services industry lives in its own bubble. I remember talking to friends, and we feel that, oh, markets are down, things are bad. I remember talking to friends who were CEOs of hotels and hearing their stories. And believe me, they had it much tougher than we did. And I just felt it gave me such a sense of perspective. And there's so many other stories. So I think communities are very important. I also think sometimes, and now this is a woman thing, I also think sometimes as women, we don't make enough of an effort to invest in networks and communities. I talk about this in the book also, because we think, ho jayega, I have to be very busy being a good employee. But this also adds, by the way, your network also adds to your day job. So don't sacrifice what is important because something else urgent came in the way. And I don't think communities demand as much of our time as we think. So that's the other message I want to give. A lot of people don't go out and do this saying, I don't have time. It takes less time than watching whatever Bombay Begums on Netflix or whatever else people watch.
True. True, absolutely, absolutely. And in the days of COVID, like it's just been all virtual, so therefore there's been very limited. And this is one of the few face-to-face sort of meetings that we are doing.
Yeah.
So this is also a first for us, where we're actually doing a LinkedIn
face-to-face.
Live. Yeah, on LinkedIn Live.
It's my first LinkedIn Live too, so I'm learning something.
Many firsts over here. So absolutely. So I think Radhika's message also very clear to all of us. Invest that time in networking because communities actually build networks and build you in so many different ways, not just confined to your little professional or your academic network. So and we see that every day. We see that every day in our return to work community when people cheer each other on and they celebrate when somebody is getting a job. And it's a feeling of that, that there's a family behind you who's actually trying to do something. So we see a lot of that. So thank you for all those fantastic answers, Radhika. We know that there are a lot of answers flowing into Zoom, questions flowing into Zoom as well. We will take some of those maybe later, and we will request Radhika to respond to some of them from the book and outside.
I will.
So this setting wasn't really conducive to us seeing the questions and then answering. So we will bring that in. But our community wanted to know you a little better.
Sure.
So I'm just going to ask you some questions, rapid fire, and you cannot take too much of time to think about it.
And I'll be rapid, and I will have fire.
Yes. So easy questions. Your favorite part of the book?
My favorite part of the book is the last chapter on self-confidence, and chapter 4, which recounts a lot of stories from my parents and on adaptability, because it really picks up from growing up. It's unique.
Fantastic. And you do talk a lot about adaptability.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes,
do.
yes. And how learnability is more important than just growth.
Yeah.
Um, Second question, your favorite movie?
Oh, I don't have a single favorite movie, but essentially everything that Yash Chopra made between like 1970 and 2000, like all that Lamhe Silsila, Kabhi Kabhi, all of that stuff, I really, really like.
So you love the sentimental,
The sentimental,
love
poetic,
story,
romantic.
poetic, romantic.
I'm also someone who loves words, so I loved the language of those movies. I loved the poetry. I remember all of that. So, and some of it is before I was born, but yeah, that's me, guys.
And that's another very unique dimension to you, because typically finance and poetry and romance don't really go too well with each other, but somehow you manage to all make it blend.
Yeah, sometimes people expect a finance professional to be reading finance books, and I mean, you can, but I like to read fiction. So I've always been a person of twin interests.
Right.
And I think it's cool. Look, Arundhati Bhattacharya told me she was a literature major. She headed the largest bank in the country. So maybe there's hope for some of us who like literature and English.
True, yes. So third question, uh, in your long journey, there have been many difficult moments, and you've spoken about some of them.
Yeah.
Something that you haven't mentioned in the book, and you'd like to leave the audience with.
Something that I haven't mentioned. And, I think I've recounted so many things in the book outside of my fights with my little brother, which were very annoying, that I can't think of something.
And that tells you that the book truly is a mirror of your inner
Yeah,
persona.
I
And
think
you've
I've
really shared
recounted.
a lot of it.
I
in
think
the
I've
book.
recounted quite a bit.
That's fantastic. Your favorite color?
Red.
Why?
I look, my walls are red. I mean,
I know, and you're wearing a shade of red.
I'm wearing like a still more decent shade of red, as my mother would call it. I love red. I think it's bright, it's happy, it's powerful, it's passionate.
So clearly,
it has personality.
It has personality.
It can be angry. It can mean so many things. It's got persona.
So clearly, Radhika does not look at red from a financial lens at all.
It's not. It also means losses, which but
which you do not like.
yeah, which I don't like. But yes, outside of that,
and that's the sentimental Yash Chopra side of Radhika, which is actually coming in over here. Tell me a little more about. We talked about a movie. We talked about a color. Your favorite book?
I don't have a single favorite book, but I love international fiction. Okay, if I had to pick one, it would be To Kill a Mockingbird. I've read it many, many times in various stages of my life, and I've always felt that whether I read it at 11 or 12, whether I've read it at 37, 38, I've learned something new from that book. So I think it talks a lot about understanding human beings.
And you mentioned Atticus Finch also.
I have. That's been a very strong influence.
That is lovely. And if any of you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird,
it's a great book, guys.
It's a great book.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Right after you finish reading Limitless,
please
read you can read To Kill a Mockingbird.
It's a very good book.
Absolutely. Your favorite food?
Oh, okay. This is going to be really hard. I think it's pizza. I think I can eat pizza all day. And not any kind of pizza. So I'm particular about food. I grew up in Italy. I went to high school in Italy. And so the classic Italian margherita pizza. I mean, if I'm in a bad mood, then pizza is pizza is usually the other one. Since I'm a North Indian, is stuffed parathas.
Fantastic. So pizzas and parathas for Radhika. If she's ever coming to your home for dinner,
you know what to make.
All right, fantastic. And I just want to do a time check here. What's the time?
I can tell you the time. 5:50. We are well on time.
Oh, fantastic. We are well on time then. Fantastic. Then we can perhaps take a few questions.
Yeah, we can take a couple of questions.
Look at that, and we'll just probably see that. But last question from your side. One thought that you'd like to leave everyone with, before they read your book, and how do you want them to sort of treat your book? Do you want it like you know what I'm saying?
So, I want people to think of Limitless like a friend,
Okay.
a friend along your journey. And we all have different journeys and unique journeys. And this is not going to be new discoveries. So let me say that. But it's a friend sharing stories of one journey, and I hope some of these stories connect to you and your stories, and I hope you find some resonance in some of those stories. And once you do, I also hope that you share your story,
Right.
so that more people share their story. And we just have real nice conversations. So I would like you to treat Limitless as a good friend you met on your journey.
That is such an amazing thought. Like a good friend that you met in a journey, you're thinking of the book like a person,
Yeah.
and which carries a lot of yourself.
Yeah, like a warm, happy person who's just talking about their thoughts, their experiences. Maybe you'll share some back.
Absolutely. So that's what really Radhika's talking about. She is very, very active on social media, definitely on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So if you are on LinkedIn or any of the other media, I think she's very active in Twitter as well. So do share your stories. And we were just discussing some time back that there are folks who actually read about her, who do not know her personally, but they do share a lot of themselves.
Yeah, they do.
And that is where the slice of life really adds richness to also, Radhika's own trajectory. And that's such a beautiful thing, that the book should generate those conversations and should generate that friendship along the way. That is truly how a community behaves.
Exactly.
So your book is truly a community book, which is creating a sort of community of itself. So thank you so much. There are some questions which I have with
Okay.
me, so I'm going to ask you some of those questions. One is about women and money. Women have this very uncomfortable relationship with money. And here I'm talking to you as an AMC head and as someone who is, dealing with India's money markets very deeply. What would you tell women to do? Because most of them are not only not financially independent, but they do not also like to bother themselves with too much of finance in their minds and heads.
Go get financially independent, one. My mother told me, and she's a very educated woman, that if there's one thing she regrets is that she gave up a career too early and then she picked it up later. So be financially independent. And once you learn to earn your money, you're smart enough to invest it. So please don't outsource that job to anyone. And don't buy the nonsense that women are not about money, etc. It's really not that difficult, and a lot of help is out there.
Absolutely. I was just speaking to some folks today who have some very innovative ways of making women think about money very differently, so that this whole taking off this whole discomfort from the equation between women and money. The second question that we had from your fans out there is on mental health, and that's something that you've talked a lot about. So tell us how you think Indian workplaces and generally how people can approach mental health in a more proactive, in a more productive way.
I think we need to break down wall. I wrote a chapter in Limitless that said take off the cape in reference to CEOs. But I think we need to take off the capes and break down the walls and have much more open conversations in office and build relationships where we can have these discussions. My learning over COVID in running a large team is that mental health issues are real and they are rising. And when you have a person in office who has a mental health challenge, you don't realize what it takes away from productivity and from the environment. So I think we need to work very hard to build an environment that is compassionate, where we can have those conversations, which is why I have been such a spokesperson for vulnerability. And I do believe that we can take care of mental health, we can be compassionate with people while being bloody aggressive with business. And I do believe both of them can go hand in hand. I am competitive, I am aggressive, I want the best for my business. I'm responsible to my investors, but I also think it needs to happen in a way that is good to people. And I think, by the way, as owners of companies or employees of companies, brands today, the youth also today connects to brands that are like that anyway, right? So that is my perspective.
Now that's a great thought, because we saw a lot of rise in mental health issues
Yeah.
regarding during COVID. We also saw our entire Not Alone community of